How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew First Culture podcast. This is Jeremy, and thank you very much for spending some time with us today. Really excited about the conversation today. It's kind of been something that's been on the back burner for several months, and looking forward to digging into it finally. So, with me currently is my friend Marc Aloan. How you doing, Marc?
Hey, good man. Happy to be here again.
And we had Jarrod Sergi scheduled. He's got a couple errands to run, and so hopefully at some point he'll pop in as well and add in his opinions to the conversation too. But to just kind of get going on it for those that don't know Marc, go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself, and we'll jump into it.
Yeah, so nobody from nowhere, like most everybody else you hear from. I work in South Carolina. I'm a captain, been in the fire service since 2001. So coming up on a lot of those anniversaries that are supposed to make a difference as far as tenure. But, I think I just learned more and more all the things
Oh yeah.
I didn't know. And uh, I know I enjoy the work. I've got a little blog slash Facebook presence called The Fire Inside. I've been writing about fire service culture and development and leadership for probably the better part of 6 years now. I've been fortunate to be going around the country for that same time period, teaching some classes, meeting people, networking, and just keeping my flame for the fire service going.
It's awesome. And just to pitch Marc a little bit, when I first got started, I've had him on my podcast before, so we've talked a lot about everything. But when I first got started, it just somehow I've luckily found some of his stuff, and it really spoke to me in a way that I needed to hear it. So if you have not kind of read or heard anything from him, definitely go check his stuff out. Definitely a good writer and put some good content out. But anyway,
Appreciate it.
you're welcome. So this conversation started behind the scenes, really through a lot of growth through me. And then once I kind of figured out that maybe I know what I'm talking about, Marc reached out to me and made me question what I thought I knew. So we're going to talk about it a
Sorry.
little bit today. No, it's good. Because I don't know. I mean, this is a topic that I think there is a lot of people out there that don't really know what to feel and how to decipher this. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about mission, vision, and maybe even a little bit of purpose. And so just to give a quick recap of how we got here. So through my journey of trying to learn and trying to grow as a leader, I started wondering about that term vision or mission. I wanted to create something for my crew that we could aim towards. And I started reaching out to people, what is the difference? What do I need to create and how and all this? And I got like pretty much every person I asked, I got a different answer, seemed like. And a lot of them were just like, it's whatever you want it to be. If you wanted to call it a vision, it's a vision. If you wanted to call it a mission, it's a mission. And so it started off very gray for me. And, through some books that I read and different things that I absorbed, I started thinking it this way. My mission is my target. That's what a leader should aim for. And so that's kind of what my first stage in this process was. And then reading more books and listening to more different people, I kind of got a different idea. And this is kind of where I was sitting and just thinking that maybe this is what it truly is. And that is the vision is something that the vision is actually your target. That's something that's out there. We want to, aim for. That's the perfect picture of a culture that I want. And the mission is basically the roadmap of how to get there. And so that's kind of what I was operating under just mentally. And I think I put out a post or a podcast or something over that topic, kind of discussing it. And then Marc kind of reached out to me saying that he thinks it's backwards. And so I think I was at a conference or you were at a conference or something, and we didn't really have time to to mess around with it. And I thought this would be a great topic just to do it right here, record it and share it. And so that's the groundwork laid out. And so kind of going from there, what were you kind of trying to what were you trying to express to me that you feel is your opinion of that?
Yeah, so I wish I could tell you where I picked this up, because this is definitely not original content by any means, right? And I think it's actually probably more a combination of formal education, getting into that organizational leadership stuff in school, and then also talking to leaders around the country that have done far more than I'll ever dream of doing in the fire service. But when you think about the mission, most departments these days, and I say most, sadly not all, but most departments have a mission statement. And that mission statement is generally, to paraphrase, hey, we're here to protect anybody that crosses our district boundaries from anything that can harm them through some combination of fire prevention, and response, insert, weird quotation marks there. So, but the important thing to take out of that, as far as the mission goes, is that that's an outward statement. That's our commitment to the community. That's the measure of success that our citizens can hold us to. And ironically, those mission statements get so wordy these days, and it's almost impossible to really hold yourself to it, because it's like everything else in the fire service. It's a one size fits all statement that's trying to make sure we don't leave out any discipline or any part of the population, or any call type, whatever. So anyways, I say because it's outward, the mission statement is what we're about. It's what we do, because that's the standard we're holding ourselves to. If we say we're here to protect your life and property, and we burn every house to the ground, then we're not being true to our mission. If we say that we're here to give prevention and risk reduction to the community, and yet we don't invest in it at all, then we're not true to our mission. The vision is the inward statement. Most people in the community will know nothing about the vision statement of our departments. They'll be very aware of the mission statement, because we plaster it all over our websites and our Facebook pages and our stations, and it's what we ask people when they promote. But the vision is how we're going to get there. And the reason I said it was backwards is because the mission rarely changes. If we really think about the big fire service, the mission of the fire department has been the same thing since the turn of time, right? We've added a couple things in there, and honestly, I don't really know that we added them as much as we just acknowledged things that we were already doing technically. But that vision, the vision statement, will shift drastically based on the experience level of your personnel, the chiefs that come through the doors that move on, the outward influence of the city council, of the community groups, of the business leaders, because we have all these different stakeholders. And our vision is, how can we achieve this mission, but to serve every one of these stakeholders? And that the vision statement is also a moving target, because as we hit metrics and as we complete benchmarks and we either improve or go backwards, we have to change that vision. So I'll give you an example. If you're a department that was primarily volunteer, or combination that has transitioned to a career department, that's going to look a little different than FDNY, who's pretty much had a similar business model their entire time. And so your vision is that, hey, we want to be a premier agency, or hey, we just want to make sure we're answering the calls, right? Because as volunteers, we couldn't turn out, whatever it may be. And that's where I say it's a little different for everybody, because the vision just changes. The other thing with the vision is that it's the buy-in for the department. So it may not be the vision of one person. It may be the vision of everybody, or conversely, unfortunately, it may be the vision of one person and everybody is not bought into it. And so how can we be guided towards our mission if we don't share a vision for how to get there, how our response will look, what we're focused on, what our disciplines will be? And that's kind of what I meant when you asked that. And it's funny because I used to think the same way you did, right? And it's worth noting too that I think as you go through your career, as your experiences change and your exposure changes, your responsibilities change a little bit. I think this is just one example of many where we do start looking at things differently, and you almost feel like a fraud, right? Like
Oh yeah.
for a decade, I preached this, and then today I had an epiphany and I changed. I was like, oh, you're full of shit, you know? No, I'm not. Like, I'm trying to grow over here and you're not letting me.
Yeah.
So
No, and that's a good point. And that's something that is very hard for a lot of us to do. And hopefully we all understand that that's just part of it. I am somebody that has learned probably more in the past 3 years about my job and basically about everything than I did in the 17 years before that. And so going along with that has been a lot of me having to say, man, I had no idea. I have been doing it wrong this whole time, or I've been teaching it wrong this whole time, whatever. But if you aren't involved in any kind of growth, or if you're wanting to be involved in any kind of growth, you're going to experience some of that. And that's just part of that process. And I think it's a good thing, because if I don't have that statement to say, it probably doesn't mean I haven't really grown or haven't evolved myself or my skills or anything. And so I see that as a good thing myself.
yeah, and I think another analogy you could use with this too is, the mission is, if you take it on a personal level, right? The mission is you're going to go to work, right? You have a job description and a writing assignment. So that's your mission for the day, right? That's the standards you're going to be held to. That's what you're responsible for. I think responsibility is a great way to describe mission. And maybe we're tasked with it. Maybe we've volunteered ourselves to cover this discipline or this call type, but that's our responsibilities. But as far as your career goes, to go with the theme of growth, is that I bet that you didn't vision being a company officer on your first day on the job, or maybe you did, but you didn't, your path for getting there was a little different. Maybe your department was a little different then. It's funny, the more the more I travel, I've found out that there's a good number of chief officers that never intended to be chief officers. They were either right time, right place, or had an event where they're like, hey, I think I could really be beneficial here. But it's not like people are coming off the line on day one and like, man, I want to be in that front office one day. It's actually quite the contrary.
Yeah.
But your career progression that you might think of, that's almost your personal vision statement, right? So you have these responsibilities, and this is how you're going to get yourself there, and that will change over time throughout your career based on changes in your department, changes in your personality, changes in your training. There's call events that will drastically change it. There's even the case of which I see more and more, I think probably lately than a long time, of people that decide that, hey, I envisioned myself as a fire officer until I got here, and now I envision myself as an engineer for the rest of my career because I don't enjoy all these intangible things that come with being a company officer, and I am much happier doing this. And now their vision changes because you still have to navigate your career, you still have to be successful, but again, that's a drastic change. Your mission is still the same, right? To be a good firefighter, to serve your community, to support your brothers and sisters, but the vision of how you're going to accomplish that changes based on your personal aspirations. So I think if you take that analogy and then flip it to the department, it's very much the same, but on a much wider scale.
Yeah, man, it's it's interesting how two words can mean so much differently, but at the same time so similar to different people. And as you're kind of talking through this, I see exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, it's almost exactly opposite of what I previously thought through kind of that journey that I've taken. But at the same time, I could still see the other way too. And it's just weird. It's like, what does it really matter? Does it matter what they mean to you, as long as you have that process kind of in place, as long as this is who I want to be, or this is who I want my crew to be, and these are the things we're going to be doing to get there. Do you think that really matters?
Yes and no, right? Cheap answer. I think it matters because it's just another example in the fire service where we get attached to words that we don't really take time to understand what they mean. And then on top of that, we like to just say, oh, well, I don't think it means, I don't feel like it means that. And so I'm going to define it my own way, and too bad if you're not with me. And that's, that's something that I took from Aaron Fields, years ago, was the way he talked about how different we are from other trades and other industries, and that we don't really have a unified language. A 220 volt outlet is a 220 volt outlet in, Los Angeles and New York City, whereas a tanker is a completely different situation in the fire service. And so from that aspect, I say it does matter, because how can we be unified as a profession when we continue to find, like, I'm going to say stupid, it's not a stupid topic, right? But these seemingly insignificant things that continue to cause, unintentional division, where, oh, well, it's my way or your way. On the flip side, though, if you take the words out of it, what are we tasked with doing, and how are we getting there? Those are all words we can understand. They don't rhyme, right? They're not similar. They're just, it's two ideas. And that's the concept of mission and vision, however you want to slice it, is that you are tasked with responsibilities to your community. And if you don't have a path to get there that's measurable and expandable and adjustable along the way, then you're never going to reach them. And that's why they have to coexist too. So I would agree that what you call them probably doesn't matter as much as, are you carrying out those two facets? Are you defining what you do, and are you setting a path to get there that you're constantly refining along the way?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of where my mind is headed, at least right now. So I don't know if he's ready to talk. All right, there he is. I was about to say, I didn't know if you're ready to talk yet.
Sounds like you're calling from a parachute.
Dude, man, it's been a crazy morning. It was like my one day off. I was working in the firehouse, and I was teaching the last 2 days, and this raffle, and I had to go gather prizes. Like, crap, let's see if I can get all this crap done.
Well, I appreciate you making time for us, for sure. So
absolutely.
Jarrod Sergi here, and tell us a little bit about yourself real quick, and we'll keep going.
Yeah, of course. I am a captain over in Norfolk, Virginia. I've been there. I just started my 18th year. Company officer, obviously. I'm assigned to an engine, engine 14, best station in the city, busiest station in the city. Great crew. Life is good for me right now.
Awesome. Like I said, I appreciate having both of you on there. I really respect kind of both of your opinions, and that's exactly why I wanted to have you both on this topic, because what you've missed so far, Jarrod, is basically Marc making me question everything that I thought I knew about mission and vision. So
everybody's got to be good at something.
He has that effect on people.
Yeah. So I know you haven't heard what has been said so far, but give us just a kind of your idea of what those two words look like as far as your leadership style and your mentality.
As far as mission
and vision. Yep.
Mission and vision. So I'll start with the mission, right? So you pull up any website on a fire department, and they probably have some mission statement of some sort, right? And for me, that's like the foundation for every decision that I make, right? Everything goes back to that. I think it's important to kind of know why you exist as a fire department, and I think sometimes we try to cram too much stuff in that mission. But it's why we exist, right? Like, this is why we show up every day, is to make sure that we perform and meet this mission. When it comes to being my foundation, what I mean by that is anything I do, it all goes back to that, right? So why do we train? It goes back to support the mission. Why do I counsel you? It all goes back to the mission. Why do I make these decisions, whether for the individual or the team? It all goes back to the mission. Like, this is why we exist. And within that mission, there's standards and there's expectations and there's a lot of other stuff to make sure that we meet that mission. And when people fail, then we hold them to account. I really believe that if a fire department is going to put these fancy mission statements on their websites, and they're going to quote them at recruit graduations and promotions and fancy little speeches, they better freaking damn sure mean it. Because when they walk off the stage, are those just hollow words, or do people see that in your actions? Do they truly see that you fire department through your training programs, through your accountability, through your leadership programs, through all of that stuff. Like that, the mission is extremely important. Now, as far as vision, that's basically where I want them to be. Now, I'm just a company officer. I can only see things through my lens. But the vision for me is it's just a roadmap, right? It's, hey, this is where we want to go. This is why I want to get there, and this is what we're going to do as a team to get there. And I think as long as my crew knows where I want them to go, both individually and as a crew, it clears up a lot of questions. Like, hey, why is the captain doing this? Well, because he's explained to us that this is where we're going to go. Like, I put it on them a lot of times. When I first got to my current assignment, and I've done it before, I put it on them. Like, where do you guys want to go? Like, you've been here at this station longer than me. I want you to help develop a vision for the team. And, so we want to have this. We want to be checked off on this. We want to have guys be able to, be trained on this. We want to be the best station in the city. That doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by, being 10 toes up in the recliner all day. Like, all right, well, this is what we want. We've created a vision for ourselves. We know where we want to go, and we're going to work hard to get there. And I think a company officer or anybody in a management or a leadership position that can eloquently explain their vision and how they're going to get there and why we should get there is going to be successful.
All right. Well, I mean, Mark, that's pretty much lined up with kind of what you were saying, right? I mean, wouldn't you say?
It's pretty close. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty close. I think Jarrod brings up a good point, though, in that, there's also layers of this. It's kind of like an onion, right? The department has an overall mission statement and hopefully some kind of a vision statement to accompany it. But how that trickles down to the individual stations and battalions and companies and all that, it just, it's a smaller piece of the pie, but they all go together to the bigger thing. And I think if you're not in that mindset as a supervisor at any level, that, you're looking at what you're tying back the reason you do what you do to, and then also incorporating everybody into how to get there, then you probably need to reassess what your priorities are.
Yeah. So just kind of on that same lines, just like a personal story for myself, I've been at the station that I'm currently at for about 5 years, I think now. And when I went there needed to be a lot of changes. It was a broken culture, it needed to be rebuilt. And so I felt like, of course, I knew nothing compared to the little bit that I know now, but I knew that or at least I felt like I needed to come in with this stuff in place. I needed to have the mission for this crew and lay it out and just work to gain buy-in. And as the years have went, and as we've, made some wins and gained some ground and culture and in a really good place, especially compared to where we came from, I now feel like it's not mine anymore. It's now time to share that. It's now time to have them own a piece of this vision and this mission. And so that's kind of the stage we're in right now. Is have either one of you kind of experienced that same type of process, or do you feel like it's always should be open to the whole crew?
Go ahead, Jarrod.
So I had if I think I understand your question, like, coming into a new environment for us, a new station, a new crew that maybe didn't have any type of direction before, right? Which kind of along those lines. So I had that going into my new assignment, and truthfully, it was I think easy for me in a sense that people wanted it. Like, I think that they wanted some direction, they wanted some better guidance, leadership, if you will. Like, they were kind of craving it. So when I got there, it wasn't too difficult for me to really, change the course of that ship. I just kind of came in, I laid out some expectations, and I put it on them. Like, hey, what do you guys want to do? Like, what do you need from me? I'm not here to pull the rug out from under your feet. Now, there are times when an officer has to do that. Don't get me wrong. I do think there's a time and a place, and you can pull it it out the right way. But that wasn't the place that I walked into. And now I'm an optimist. You know, I'm a half glass full guy, but I think people want to. I think they want to go somewhere and they want to work for a place where they can look to the horizon and say, all right, well, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I'm showing up every day, but what's in it for me? Like, in a good way. Like, what's in it for me? What's in it for the team? Like, why should I come here and listen to this knucklehead every day I come to the firehouse? And I think if you go in there and you lay out expectations, you lay out a plan or a vision for your crew, and you tie everything back to that mission. Again, hey, this is why we're doing these things. I think people are going to want to rise to those expectations. You know, firefighters want to go to work and they want to be happy. And when you make them confident firefighters are happy firefighters, and happy firefighters make your life easy as an officer. They contribute to high morale. They become engaged. They start their own training. They look out for each other. So I think you have to go in there and you got to do that. Sometimes you got to put your foot down and do it a little bit more abrasive than others. But I think people are naturally drawn to that. Not everybody. You know, there's going to be some that they can care less. They come in, they punch the clock. They already can't wait to make their plans the next day. Those people exist everywhere. But I think the lion's share of the people that are in your departments, they want to be led. They want to know where they're going. And I think if you go out there and you lay it out for them in a way that they can understand, in a way that they can see themselves as being a part of that, then they're in, man. They're gonna work hard for you, and they're gonna do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right on, man. What comes to mind for me with this, Jeremy, is somewhere along this fascination that we've taken with leadership in the fire service over the past decade, and more specifically with a confusion about what servant-based leadership is in probably the past 5 years, there's been this kind of weird transition to the belief that if there's any type of dictator style to your leadership at any point about anything, then you're doing it wrong, that everything is somehow a democracy until it's not. And that's a very flawed concept.
Absolutely.
A phrase I've tried to coin, specifically when I explain it to people that work for me, is that, there's a difference between, having input and that input being actionable input. And you can't say that I didn't let you have a voice in it, but at the same time, we do have a rank structure within our organizations. And for whatever reason, hopefully based on merit and talent and sound decision-making, I'm in charge of this crew right now. And so while I am open to your suggestions, at the end of the day, it is ultimately up to me, because when things go bad, I am ultimately responsible for it. And so I think that as a chief officer or any type of officer in the fire department at any level, you are responsible for basically analyzing how the department's overall mission fits into your little specific part of that, big machine. And then you are responsible for setting the vision for the people that work for you and how to get there. So kind of like Jarrod said, right? Like, you need to get that buy-in. But at the same time, people want to be led. So I'll give you a great non-fire service example. I've been coaching youth soccer for the past, 5 years, my daughter's teams. And so our team this year is actually more talented than they realize, but they don't play like it. So we got blown out like 2 games ago, like 10-1. It was something embarrassing. And so, I'm usually pretty nice. They're 11 and 10-year-old girls, right? You got to be careful. It's a weird time in their life. You're trying to build their self-esteem. You're trying to teach them how to, follow the rules and discipline and teamwork and all that stuff. And so I'm usually a pretty laid back coach until I'm not. And I sat them down before the next game and I said, look, I don't know about you, but it's a lot more fun when you're having good results. And I'm not saying you can't have fun playing in a losing effort, but there's different times to have a nice coach and there's different times to have a mean coach, and you're going to get a very different coach today. And I was so stern with them for the first time since we've, been together in this team for a couple of weeks, and their eyes, their faces just like, oh my God, who's this scary guy? Right. But their effort in that game was phenomenal. It was night and day. And so to speak to Jarrod's point, right? Like, sometimes you got to put your foot down, and that's if we can fix one thing about the fire service right now, to me, it's that whole, like, we have servant leadership on one corner, and then we have this whole buddy to boss concept. And it's like neither. It's just like everybody has a freaking job to do. So just focus on getting everybody to do their job. Stop trying to do their job. Stop letting them try to do yours, and produce results and move on. And that's to me how you join these things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's servant leadership is good, right? Like I largely believe that, but I think it's kind of overcorrecting, where kind of like Mark said, like there's times where as a company option, it's like, no, like this is what we're doing. Like, and I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but servant leadership is important, and it's a nice concept, but when it overcorrects, I think it could lead to insubordination. I think it could lead to, like this, kind of like Mark mentioned, like, well, why aren't you listening to me? Like, you're the boss. Like, I'm the employee, I guess, if you will. Like, you guys march on about servant leadership. Like, you're supposed to listen to me. It's like, no, I'm supposed to consider what you say, and I'll try to listen to what you say. And if it's realistic and it's practical, it makes sense, it's good for the team. Like, all those things are great, but there's going to be times where it's not. And just because I listen to you doesn't mean that we're going to do every single thing that you say. Like, at some point, I think leaders and managers have to put their foot down, and that might come off as sounding really, really mean and insensitive. And I don't mean it that way. But I think servant leadership has to be tempered. And if it's not, then I think people in leadership positions they'll end up losing their ability to lead.
Well, and so to your point, Jarrod, too, servant leadership is a confused concept. Servant leadership it has nothing to do with input from the crew. It's about a leadership style that focuses on giving your people what they need to be successful. And sometimes that's a hard ass, and sometimes that's a shoulder to cry on. It has nothing to do with their input. Part of it is that you may ask for their input sometimes, but it's you're not doing their job for them. I think the servant term throws people off. It's serving your people, and serving them is setting them up for success. It's pushing them when they need to get pushed. It's recognizing their talents and saying, hey, I know you don't want to promote, but this is why you should, and this is how I'm going to help you get there, or vice versa, right? Like, I know you want to promote, but you're not quite there yet. So let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let me help you. It's
right.
Making decisions for your team that they may not like. And it's ironic, man. And I'm guilty like the rest. So don't think I'm on some kind of pedestal over here preaching about crap I can't do. But, we talk so much about uncomfortable conversations. And I truly believe that they're uncomfortable because we've told everybody they're uncomfortable. Like, I waste more time trying to prep for, like, if I'm going to sit Jeremy down, I'm like trying to think of like all the ways he's going to spin this thing, because, I need him to make sure that his air pack's full in the morning. And so I'll stew about it for like 24 hours before we go to work. And I finally, okay, man, we're going to talk. It's the right time. It's not confrontational. It's in a neutral place. Hey, man, like, I've noticed your air pack has been running out early. And I glanced at it the other day and it's low. Like, you really need to fill it up, for your family and for yourself and for the crew. And Jeremy just looks at me and says, I know, I'll do better. It wasn't a hard conversation. Like, he already knew it was coming, right? But what we accept is the standard. And so people are so scared on the accountability end, which is another word we confuse, right? Accountability is like, hey, man, like, this is the expectation. I'm just reminding you to do it. If you want to get pissy with me, that's your problem. You're mad at yourself, right? You're not mad at me. Now, if I'm an overbearing dick of a boss and I just yell all day, every day, that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
But, that's my soapbox on servant leadership. I'm clearly no expert on it, but that's, I've been to enough seminars and conferences and classes on it. And it's absolutely interpreted and misapplied wrong on so many levels these days.
Yeah. Now, I think you brought up a really good point, and it's not catering. We're not catering to the people below us. Right. It's when what you said was perfect. It's us giving them what they need. It's not us giving them what they're asking for every time, or us giving them what they want. It's us giving them what they need, which a lot of times, unfortunately for leaders, it's opposite of what they want. You have somebody that doesn't quite get as motivated as they should, and they're comfortable where they're at. Well, they need somebody to push them. They don't want that, but that's what they really need. And so that's kind of, yeah, exactly what you're talking about is that's something that can be construed, as soft or catering to your people all the time. Well, that's not even close to what it is. And so, yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I've got a really good one that I actually steal from my battalion chief, and we've had enough of these uncomfortable, conversations with other employees, and it just hit me one day the way he said it, man. It almost sounds so demeaning off the rip, but it's not. And he would just look at people and be like, "Hey, you have job responsibilities. Yeah, this is what you're expected to do. Okay, so have you ever returned your paycheck to the city?" And they just look at him sideways. Like, I bet that every 2 weeks, whether you perform to the expectations we've set for you and the citizens expect, you've cashed that paycheck. So if you're willing to turn it in, and give up your pay for the past 2 weeks, and hey, we don't have to discuss this anymore because you're admitting you didn't earn it. But as long as you cash that check, I don't really see what the problem is. Do your job. And it's like, it hit me like, what a great analogy, right? Because everybody wants to whine about how we don't pay them more, but they never want to talk about whether they've actually earned the value of the compensation that we give them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, that's a question we all need to ask ourselves all the time. Even the people that are bought in, even the people that are trying hard, and there's always more that we can do. But for some, yeah, that's the exact truth. We're expecting for this, this fire service to give us, it's something that we are owed or anything like that, instead of the other way around. So something else I'm going to throw into this mix just to complicate it and confuse it even more is the word purpose. So how and where does that fit into all of this? Is that similar to one or both of these words, or is it a completely different thing?
That's a good question. Make sure I got all right. I'm not muted, am I? All right.
No, you're good.
Purpose. Yeah, I guess purpose. Let me think on that for a minute. If Mark, if you're ready, you can grab it. But like, when I think purpose, it's like, why am I doing it? Like, what's the point? What's the point of me doing this? What's the purpose of me doing this? Why do I have to listen to my boss? Why do I have to pay attention to that mission statement? Why do I have to train every few days or every day or whatever the case may be? Like, there's some purpose to your actions. And I think if there's no purpose, like, we hire people with no purpose all the time. They come in, they look for a job, and the fire department sounds cool, and they're there, and they show up every day, and they do what they're supposed to do, and they leave. But there's no purpose behind their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make them bad firefighters? I mean, not necessarily. But they're certainly not going to be the ones who are out there pushing to support the mission. Going back to that, they're not going to be the ones out there that are pushing for new projects in the department. They're not going to be the ones that are trying to improve your response policies or your operational policies, or maybe even your administrative policies, because they have no purpose. Certainly not in the fire service sense. Like, they may have other things in their life that they do have purpose, and that's great. That's awesome. But we're talking about the fire department, right? And for me, and I don't know if eventually I'll snap out of it, but I'm a guy who comes to work. It's like, I have purpose. I know why I'm doing this. I love this profession. I want to go out there. I want to serve the public. I want to support the mission. I want to engage in training. I want to support the organization. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for people that show up to my job to do the same. Like to engage and find that purpose. And some people find it eventually. They get around the right crews, they get around the right officers, and they find reason and meaning in their work and purpose in it. And it makes sense to them. Like, it kind of all comes together. Like, hey, this is why we're doing this. I'm doing it to support the mission. There's purpose. There's a reason for why I'm doing these things. And I'm going to support the team. I'm going to support the organization. And there's people who just won't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to disclaimer this with that this aha moment that I'm having may just be a result of a gross imbalance of sleep and caffeine that I'm on this morning. So if it's crazy, let me know. But I almost feel like purpose is, if you add mission and vision together, that becomes purpose, right? It's It's what you're going after and why you're doing it. Maybe we'll be famous one day because we just came up with a concept that throw out the mission statement, throw out the vision statement. Let's just have a purpose statement.
Jeremy, we'll ride Mark's coattails.
Hey,
I
that's
mean,
I'm trying to get to the bottom of this myself. So if he comes up with something easier, that's fine with
hey,
me.
I'm all about
That's
easy, man. I'm not about acronyms, about the acronyms, right? But that's what I feel like purpose is, because like listen to Jarrod talk, that's exactly what he's talking about, right? Like, why are we doing this? Well, on the mission side, we're doing it because we told the community we said we would. And on the vision side, well, why are we doing this? Because this is how we get to being there. And so that's your purpose. You know, another point to hit on what Jarrod said too is that, you know, I think part of our issue as we go down trying to chase down mission and vision is that we have this unrealistic expectation that everybody every day is going to be 100% bought in. And again, to Jarrod's point, you can have some really squared away firefighters that don't give a shit about the fire department. Like, they enjoy the work,
Right.
They enjoy hanging out. They're actually stupid talented at the work, but they have literally no desire to be a leader. They have no desire to make policy. They have no desire to get outside the status quo. I mean, if you told them tomorrow that, hey, like, I know you're really good with this 1.75 inch line, but we're actually transitioning to using baseball bats to beat the fire to death, they would be like, cool, let me get that bat. I'm in there, whatever you need, Cap. Right. No thought like that's, and you need those people in your organization. And too often we go after them. What we should be going after is the ones that actually work against the organization and against the grain, trying to bring people down, which is a much smaller demographic of the fire department. Because while you may not have the purpose that the fire department has for the job, as long as you're doing what you're told, right, you're producing outcomes that good. It's the people that their purpose actually goes against our purpose, right? They're selfish, they're self-centered, they're trying to make everything about themselves. They don't care about the outcome, right? There's some ulterior motive there, whether it's a paycheck or glory or ego, whatever. Those are the people we should be trying to knock out, right? But again, so that's where the imbalance came in. So back to the original point. Purpose to me, if you combine mission and vision, it would be an equation, right? Mission plus vision equals purpose. Individually, organizationally.
And that's great. Honestly, you know, I've expressed it several times just in this, you know, less than an hour. Vision and mission are a little muddy and murky and unclear to me, which I think that's a pretty good. I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way. But the word purpose, I feel like that word is very clear. It's why I'm here. I am here for a purpose, and this is the purpose that I'm here for. And of course, that's going to be different for everybody. Everybody is here for a different reason. Everybody was given different gifts and different opportunities, but we all have a purpose. And so that to me is very clear. And even if I am kind of unclear on what exactly the cemented terms of a vision or a mission are, I know what my purpose is, or at least I know that I need to find it if I don't know. I need to find a purpose of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I think that to me is just an easier way for me to kind of aim towards it. It's I'm drifting towards that word just because it's easier for me to comprehend.
I like it, man.
And I don't think it has to be anything grand, you know? It doesn't have to be anything grand. Like, I think when people hear words like mission and vision and purpose, it's like, oh, like I have to chase this big fish, right? Like, if you're a firefighter on the back of an engine company, you have one purpose. I mean, you have maybe a little bit more, and I'm exaggerating that, but you have one, like, your purpose is to step off that truck with an 1.75 inch line and just beat the living hell out of that structure fire. Like, you should just be a good engine company firefighter, right? Like, you're assigned to a rescue company as a firefighter. Your purpose is to show up, tie like 27 million different knots, you know, get on rope. I mean, confine, like, that's you, man. That's your purpose, because you're a little sliver of that pie. And if everybody just kind of looked like micro sometimes instead of macro, I think we'd be better off. Like, they just like, dude, stop looking too far. Like, you're right here. You're in this position. This is your purpose. Like, just be awesome at it. Like, just focus right there.
Yeah, I like it too, man, because, you know, our conversation has been very much directed internally, right? Like as firefighters, as staff in the fire department. But something I've noticed and something I'm being, I guess, woken up to as far as, desires to advance later is the stakeholders and the community and the citizens. And I think that when we talk about like mission creep, like all the things that we're doing now and how it just keeps adding up, part of that is a result of us taking that same, I think, confusion that maybe we have as a profession about between the two, and we take it to the community. Like, hey, like what should our mission be, right? Like, what do you envision your fire department doing? And while I think it's important to have that input, at the same time, like we have a fire department because, we're the subject matter experts in what that looks like. And purpose to me almost becomes an educational opportunity to meld those two things together. Because if I go to the community and have a meeting and say, hey, what do you expect for your fire department? What should our mission be? You're going to get 3,000 different answers based on individual needs. But if you were to ask the community or the business leaders, the Rotary Club, like, what do you see as the purpose of the fire department? Oh, well, the purpose of the fire department is to put out fires, right? Oh, okay. Now we're kind of back in our realm, and now we can speak to all the things we do to accomplish that mission. And oh, well, if you guys do EMS too, well, yeah, we do. But like, I guarantee if you propose it as what is the purpose of the fire department, it would be to put out fires from most citizens. And so now you're in an educational talk about this is the resources we have, these are capabilities, these are the realities of our statistics, right? And so knowing that that is our purpose, we still want to be able to serve you better, and we're willing to incorporate some more purposes into our overall purpose. But to me, that's just a much different conversation than what should the mission of the fire department be. I don't know why, but like I said in the beginning, man, like words are so weird to people, and most people don't understand the meaning of the words that they use when they use them.
Yep. Absolutely. You got anything else on that, Jared?
No, brother, I don't think I do.
I think that, both of you have brought up little pieces of this, but my department several years back, they, with a chief that we no longer have, they paid, I don't know how much money to have these consultants come in, and we had representatives from, all the ranks and all this, and had a big meeting, and they came up with our mission and our vision, and they put these things on big framed things that we hung up all the stations. And it was like you've talked about, it was so wordy that nobody ever, there's no way that you would ever remember any of this stuff or really absorb any of it. And now literally they're all in storage rooms. Of course we've had, a change in leadership at the top. So I don't know if that has to do with most of it or what, but these framed nice mission statements are shoved in the back of storage closets everywhere. And so now they're replaced with nothing, so what is it now? I don't even honestly know. And so kind of what have you seen that the discrepancies of having either a confusing mission, vision, or just something that is so ridiculous that nobody's going to ever absorb it? What are the negative outcomes that come from that?
So I think I don't pin a lot of things on a fire chief. There's a lot of things I don't think the fire chief has the responsibility to do that trickles down to the line. But I think one thing is he is solely responsible, or she is solely responsible for that mission, right? And there's nothing, that's just my opinion. There's nothing worse than a 27-year-old MBA graduate coming and telling an experienced fire department how to run their department and design their mission statement. So I think that approach is flawed from the start. And I think fire chiefs and deputy chiefs and executive staff have to be very careful about that. I'm not saying don't do it, but maybe use those people as like more guidance than development. Like, again, kind of like Mark maybe described a little bit with this, go into the community for things like, that would be a time where we wouldn't want to do that. Like you want to use the history of your fire department, the capabilities of your fire department, what your fire department has done for years and years and years. And those things can evolve. But I think the responsibility lies on the leadership of that department to develop the mission. You can have somebody tell you how to frame it, but for them to develop it for you, it's going to cause confusion because they're not there. They're not doing what you do, So I think that sends the wrong message immediately throughout the line and throughout the organization. Like, here, you're going to have somebody come into our organization and develop a mission statement and tell us how to implement it. Like, that's broken, and I think the fire chief is the chief communicator of that mission. I think sometimes where they fail, and I'm not a fire chief, I'm just speculating here, right? But I think sometimes where they fail, from my view, is they don't communicate it, right? You can go and hang those things up and they look really nice. I've seen some really fancy mission statements. They look like the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
They look nice. And I am a guy who buys into that stuff, but not everybody does. And you can't just hang them there. They can't just be on your website. They have to be actively out there with their people, communicating that mission, the vision, all that stuff that we talked about, but specifically mission, like, hey, this is why we exist. This is what I need from you as a fire chief. This is what I need from you as a battalion chief. This is what I need from you as your executive staff. This is what you all can do for us to help support this mission. We've developed it. It's up to you to implement it. And it's up to the fire chief, especially, to ensure that mission is upheld.
Yeah, man, I agree, and I offer the same caveat, right? Like, I'm not a fire chief. I speak from the view of somebody though that has worked for a few fire chiefs now, right? And there's common themes of various topics. But to me, it almost reflects how your organization will act. The more complicated the mission statement, the more disjointed and complex operations become, because you're just trying to do all these things. And I know most people that will recite it because you have to for promotion and literally don't have any values to anything in it. They're just regurgitating because that's what they were told to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to knock consultants, man. I really think there's a time and a place, because at some point we have to get outside of ourselves to a concerned third party who doesn't have the blinders we have, right? Firefighters are very protective of various things in our traditions and our cultures that aren't always in the best interest of our purpose, but we like them and they make us happy, so we stick with it. And that's the value to me of bringing in a consultant as a piece of the bigger pie. However, these are the same people that think that my motivation can be bought with a water bottle with a logo on it and a pizza party at age 38, right? No, I just want to have the tools to do my job, be left the hell alone, right? I want to have motivated people, good people, policies, equipment, things that, allow me to do my job. And so I think from that aspect, it's flawed. I would rather have, as I get older, I'm more of a core value guy. I would rather have impactful words or phrases around my station that offer meaning. I like the signs that I see the guys have say, expect fire, expect victims, right? No one's coming, it's up to us. Like, not Harvard graduate level, language, right? I'm wordy when I write. Like, you don't want Marc Aloan writing your mission statement because it's going to be from Webster's dictionary and half your staff's not going to have vocabulary to understand it, right? I'm not saying it because we're stupid. I'm saying because I get stupid wordy when I write on an educational level. But you understand what expect fire means, right? You understand what no one's coming means. You understand just looking at the word them on the way out the door to the bay, right? And these are little things where people will gawk at them and they'll laugh and they'll say this is stupid, but they'll catch you, right? Like, sometimes those things just kind of catch you. If you want to frame something in your fire station, why don't you frame some pictures of the firefighters doing work and reminders of why we're there, that we're not there to sit in a recliner. We're not there to balance the books from our yard business, right? We're not there to wash our personal cars. We may be able to do all those things, but stop framing these giant, catchy corporate things. This is a blue collar job. You can have white collar direction with it, right? But it's a blue collar job. Let your blue collar guys be blue collar. Now, maybe in the administrative setting, having that mission statement is a good reminder, because hell, that's why you exist as admin, right? That's why you exist. But at the company level, man, let your company level guys be company level guys. Not everybody needs to play fire chief, right? And that's where I kind of stand with it. I would like to see more personality of the old in our firehouses. Stop trying to make them so there's a word for it, but prison-like, right? Like there's a
Sterile.
Yeah,
Sterile, yeah, like-
sanitized. Yeah.
like, yeah, Santa, great. But we're so like, why would you be worried about the public? First of all, the public's coming in your firehouse, right? Like they're not expecting to walk into an operating room. I think most people have a stereotype of firefighters that were a little rough around the edges. So I don't think they're surprised. Now you don't need nasty, offensive stuff on the walls, right? But it's weird to me that we live in a time where we have so many people at high levels of government that think showing a picture of somebody's car wrecked or house on fire is offensive and rude and a violation of privacy, while the media is doing the same thing, right? But when it comes from the fire department, it's messed up. So we got to get over that. You know, you should have pictures of fire in your district as reminders of both the good things you've done and the bad things you've done, but more importantly of being a firefighter. And that's, you know, that's where I would like to get away from the mission statements. The other caveat to this is that for every 17 line mission statement, there's a department that is not doing any of the things that they're claiming to do in it, but hiding behind it when it comes time for the budget talks, you know, and that's just real talk, man. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just,
Yeah,
it's like a policy manual, right? If I have 3,000 pages of policies, how could I possibly enforce them? Because I can't even remember them all. Like,
yeah.
Make something that fits the bill, but make it the proper serving size for the audience that you're going after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, it's a great conversation and probably just go round and round forever over what we're talking about and kind of different opinions and everything. And I've loved it. I think what I would like to touch on as we kind of get towards wrapping up is, you know, you both discussed, and you're not fire chiefs. I'm not a fire chief. We've discussed about kind of that department level, how importance and all that. What I feel like would add a lot of value to people out there is kind of maybe gearing and aiming towards that newer company officer, or even a company officer that doesn't really know much about this conversation. And, you know, somebody coming in that, what do they need to kind of be prepared for in this area? What do they need to kind of have in mind or have in place? Is it best to have it in writing so that, you know, it's easily kind of looked at through your crew? Just some tips from both of you, your company officers, you've been for a while, of what you've learned, kind of the process that you've been through, and what you feel is important for a younger officer coming in.
So you're talking about like how to communicate all these things, right? And
Yeah, just being prepared for that role. And
so the first thing I would say is, you know, if you've been lucky enough to grow up under that, you probably have developed some of those things. Like you've had the right officers, you've had the right chiefs. So you're going to get that kind of early, but not everybody has that, right? So I think if you don't have that, and hopefully you're aware of that, you seek out somebody who has it, right? Before you get there, you find a company officer or a chief or somebody that like you want to be a version of yourself in 4 or 5 years. Like I want to be that person, and pick their brain, like what worked for them, what didn't work for them. You showed up on your first day, your first week. What are the conversations that you had with the new crew? You know, did they look at you like motivated? Did they look at you like you're crazy? And then from there, once you go, you got to carve your own way also. And one thing that I found, and I've tried both ways, you know, when it comes to writing stuff down, I do think that's important. Like go through your mind, you figure out what's important to you, you write those things down, and you don't got to print up several pages of information and hand it to your new crew. But I would at least have a little bit of, you know, what your plan is as far as your purpose for the new crew, your vision, if you will, right? How you're going to get there, you know, laying out some simple expectations, and they don't have to be anything grand. They can be very, very simple, but they all should tie back to that purpose and that mission for your fire department, of course. And then one thing I did with my newer crew, I didn't really sit down and like go over my expectations. I would just kind of give those as time went on. Like, whether it was a behavioral or an action, it was one of those things like, hey guys, like next time do this is kind of what I expect. And that was easy to do. The one thing that I really like changed, and I got this from Ben Martin. Ben would tell you, if you talked to him about expectations, he would tell you that expectations are an exercise in vanity, meaning like I come in, like this is what we're going to do. And we're doing that because I'm the boss. Like, this is what I expect of you. And he doesn't buy into that 100%. So like what I did with my new crew is I walked in there and I sat down and I said, hey, look, like I'm the new captain here, or, in this case, like we're talking about somebody, listen, like, hey, I'm the new company officer, while I'm the lieutenant or the captain, my whole job here is to try to add value to the team. Like, I'm captain by title, but that's my role in a nutshell, is to try to add value to the team. So, I'm going to try to my best to do that, but I want to hear from you. And I put it on them, right? Like, I want to know about your routine. I'm going to be here for the next few weeks. I'm going to be observing how you guys do things. I'm going to be observing behavior and attitude and actions. And you guys need to bring me up to speed. Like, again, I'm not here to pull the rug from underneath your feet. And I let that play out over the course of a few weeks. Over the course of those few weeks, I sat down with everybody in that station. And I told them I was going to do this, right? And I sat down with them and I said, I wanted to know what they were working on, their goals, their short-term goals, their long-term goals. And then there's 3 questions I asked them. And I got this from a book. I want to say the It's Your Ship book. And, I'm a new boss, right? I'm a new captain. So, what everybody's thinking when they get a new company officer, like what's this person going to change? What are we? And the 3 questions I asked them were, what do you like the most? It was station 14, right? What do you like the most about 14? What do you like the least about 14? And if you were the captain today, what are some things that you would change? And I got great feedback, and they were all honest with me. And some of it was comical. We had some fun with it, but they were honest. And so I also told them, like, after we meet individually, I'm going to come back to you all and I'm going to ask you collectively, like, we're all sitting in a room together and we're going to have a conversation. Like, what are your priorities in the station and how are we going to get there? And what goal do you have for this team? And they all were like, again, we want to focus on certain training books, getting checked off on certain things, driving, acting, tech rescue stuff, but we want to be the best crew, the best station in the city. And I was like, awesome. I didn't tell them to do that. I didn't ask that of them. They told that to me. So now as a new officer, I have a canvas, right? Like, you all have told me this is what you wanted. So when we go out and I schedule training in the morning and maybe it's a bit uncomfortable, this is what you asked for, right? And eventually, I listened to a podcast, I can't remember which one it was, but eventually some of that bitching will turn to bragging, right? And they'll develop that cohesion, that camaraderie. And it's all because they wanted to make it happen. I mean, I want to make it happen too, but they drove that ship, not me. So going back to the original question, yeah, writing stuff down. Yes. Write down expectations, write down some ideas, have kind of a formula of how you're going to go in there and approach the crew, be yourself. Like, most departments, people know who you are, right? Like, they have a pretty good idea. So if you go in there and like, there's just this radical change in your behavior, I mean, down goes your credibility. You got to be very careful about that. So you got to know the crew too. I'll leave you with that. That's the last thing. Like, you gotta read the room. You may be able to go in and sit down with a crew as a new officer and lay out all these things and do all these things that we're talking about the first day. You might be able to do it the second day, or you may have to wait a couple weeks to feel them out and let them adjust and all that. Because if you go in there guns a-blazing, it's going to be hard to recover from.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on, man. A lot of mine also comes from Ben. Ben really changed my outlook on how I address people as being new to the station, right? Which is, you're new to the station, you're a new company officer. I don't care if you've been doing it for 2 years or 20 years, right? New crew, new you. It is what it is. But I didn't realize how patronizing it would be to roll into a group of people I have no baseline with and basically sit down and tell them what I expect of them. And that's what Ben really made clear to me, was that, hey, if it was you, would you want somebody sitting down and telling you that you better do all these things that you're already doing instead of kind of giving you some credit for, you know, your professionalism and your talents already? And it really changed my mind about it. Excuse me. So I've kind of flipped it a little bit. I do two things. I try to say, hey, you know, we're going to talk about expectations, but this is what you can expect from me as a company officer, right? This is what you should expect from me. This is what you should hold me accountable to, because I'm accountable as well. And over the next, you know, however many shifts as we work together, I'm going to figure out where we're at, and I may have some expectations of you, and I'll communicate them as we go. But what I really focus on is these are my quirks. These are my non-negotiables. You may be doing them already. You may not be doing them already. But understand here and now, I'm going to be a jerk about these things because I have no flexibility. And it's not a long list, right? It's literally like, get your freaking gear on the truck, you know, make sure your air pack's full, make sure your battery is charged. Like, that's all it is. It's nothing crazy. And when people hear it, they get like, oh, what is he about to say? You know, like, oh, you better make Captain's coffee with, you know, 2 creams and sugar in it. No, man, it's literally stuff you're probably already doing. And more importantly, if you're in an environment where everybody is not already doing it, you have just validated their whole, you know, thing, right? I've been doing these things and finally somebody gets it. And if it's somebody that's not doing it, it's like, okay, I better get my act together, because like, he came in strong on these few things. Like, this is not the hill I'm going to die on. But as far as the purpose and the mission and the vision and stuff, I think it's really simple as a new company officer. There's so much advice out there, and there's so many styles, and like, just do the family test, man. Like, every run you go out is your family at your house. And that's all you need. You don't need a fancy mission statement. You don't need core values. You don't need a chief officer telling you what to do. Like, you know your freaking job, or you wouldn't have promoted, or maybe you don't, and now you have promoted, you better learn it, right? But if you would just go out the door and assume you're responding to your own family, why do you need a mission statement? Like, I just don't get it. You know what I mean? And it's just such an easy test to me to do that with. So that's where I would start. And the rest will kind of fall into place. The other thing that I have found for kind of communicating expectations without is that I have found that I think people really like direction. And when I say direction, I don't mean, you know, get the supervisor finger out and start pointing at them. Writing assignments are such an easy victory for expectations, with the caveat of like, hey, you know, in lieu of something changing, right? Like, I know I can't tell you everything we're going to do at a structure fire, everything we're doing a cardiac arrest, but, and don't just make it for one person, right? I included myself on mine. I have, you know, I broke down, like, I think I use like the inverse codes, right? The 6 or 7 major call types that we go to. And like, hey, if we're dispatched for this is what the officer's responsible for. This is what the officer should be carrying off the truck, because I should be held accountable too, right? If I tell them that I'm going to bring the suction on a med call and we get in there, we don't have it. Cap, you drop the ball. Yeah, I need to do better. But all the way down the list, the engineer, the firefighter, and now if nothing else, we at least have a continuity of equipment. Everybody has a place, and more importantly, somebody can put their eyes on stuff and say, hey, either I was supposed to grab this, or he was, it's still here, it's not here, like something is amiss. And so with that goes back to the mission, right? The mission is already accomplishing it because we've sat out a plan before we even turned the wheel. And that's it. As far as being new as a company officer, I think it's a very tightrope balance of, you know, being firm, but being humble, because it's really easy to get walked on as a new company officer. You have to remember you're new. You're technically a probie all over again. You're in a new position as a new, you know, technically a new employee in that position. So lean on the senior people in your house, you know, even lean on the new guys, lean on everybody, right? Yeah. But be firm enough to where you don't seem weak and second guessing, you know, make the decision, but be willing to come back later and say, hey guys, like, let's talk about this. Okay. Yes, I made that decision. You guys kind of said it wasn't the right one. I made it anyway. You're right. It wasn't the right one. This is what we've learned from it, and we're going to move on. And now you're showing that I'm not scared to make the decision, but I'm also smart enough to realize, hey, maybe this wasn't the right course of action. And that ties back into the vision and the mission too, because now I'm showing you that, you know, our decisions have to lead to accomplishing the mission. And also now our vision as a group has changed because we're starting to meld together. And then, you know, obviously the longer you work together, the easier it gets, and you'll eventually find a rhythm and you'll start gelling, and then everybody will get transferred and you'll start over again.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. No, that's great, man. Both of you, that's some really, really great insight for for everybody, but especially for those, experiencing that role change. And man, that it as being somebody who's done it, and obviously both of you have too, it can be a very difficult, very awkward, very maybe even overwhelming spot to be put in. So that's great. I think the only thing that I would add to that is just maintaining the mindset of being okay with being flexible. You do have these things that are non-negotiables, but what I've learned is, as I've grown, as I've learned, as I've absorbed different material, and just as I change, it things change with it. My view of my purpose has changed a little bit. The view of what I want us to create as a culture for my crew has changed a little bit. So don't be so egotistical to say, oh, this is what I have down. I believed in it day one, so I don't think it should change. I think it's, that's where it should be. You got to be okay with changing and growing and kind of learning as you go. Well, I think we got pretty close to covering what we could on this one. Do you guys have anything kind of to close up with?
I can't think of anything else. It's easy to talk about the silver lining stuff, right? Like we've been talking about rolling into good crews and crews that'll listen, and
Yeah,
and you're not always going to get that.
Yeah.
You're going to get people to come in, like we're like kids, right? Firefighters. It's like, well, dad let us do this for a long time. Let's see if mom's going to let us do it too. And so like, I can remember I had a crew, it didn't last for very long, but I was different from the previous captain, right? So we would do things, or I would say things, and it was always like, well, Captain X didn't make us do this, or that's not how Captain X did things around here. And it was like, look, I don't care. Like, I'm not Captain X. So I think that if you're not to be going in there and being a total jerk, and you're doing things for the right reasons, and you're treating people respectfully, you got to be able to put your foot down as a new officer, especially with a senior crew, because they're going to try to mow you over, and you got to stand your ground. And I know this sounds really, again, maybe a little bit abrasive to say, but I truly believe in it. Like sometimes you're going to have to go in there as a new officer with a crew, and you're going to have to go in there and piss in a corner and mark your territory. And that's just the facts. And you can do it the right way. You temper the way you do it, but you can't go in there and be a pushover either, because the crew, not only will there fail to be cohesion, but they'll lose all respect for you as an officer. So you have to go through those growing pains, because you're going to get them. You're going to have them. If you haven't, then I'm sure it's coming eventually. But you got to know that it's normal, and like, hey, this too shall pass kind of thing. And just latch into the important things and don't sweat some of the small stuff,
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think my thing I would take just from this whole conversation is I really like the theme of purpose over everything else. And I think it's a much more digestible goal for everybody, from the brand new firefighter to the fire chief. And if you just would ask yourself what is your purpose? Like, why are we here today? It's pretty much the same every day, right? But like, why are we here? And it's what we're doing today, reflective of that. I think we make this job way more complicated than it needs to be more times than not. And it's that whole keep it simple, stupid thing, that would go a very long way to me. Maybe your department has a mission statement, maybe it has a vision statement, maybe it has neither of those. But the important thing is that as an individual, to be thinking about these things and guiding your actions with them, and it'll be contagious. And even if it's not, at least somebody on the roster is thinking about those things. And when somebody starts asking you why you're doing the things you're doing, you'll have a reason, and that opens up a conversation, and now they're thinking about it. And that's the goal, right? That's smart. Being smart is about thinking about things and not just, there's a time to be a robot on the fire ground. There's a time not to be. And if you want to create thinking firefighters, it starts with asking yourself these questions before you go out the door.
It's good stuff. Well, I appreciate your time, guys. I know both of you are very busy, and definitely enjoy this, and thank you very much for taking a little bit of time to talk about this stuff. Before we go, anybody that's looking for more content from you or wanted to get a hold of you, give everybody information that you want to give out.
Easiest way to find me is social media, right? You can jump on Facebook, find me on Facebook. You can go to the Trial by Fire website. You can hit up my personal Facebook page. Shoot me an email. You can shoot me a message, shoot me an email. My email is simple, just my first and last name, jarrodsergi@gmail.com. And that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, I'm the same. Social media for me, it's the Fire Inside page is, I think, the actual, address on Facebook, but it's just the Fire Inside. If you find the Kool-Aid man, you probably found me. Claim to fame, right? Registered trademark by whatever brand, by the way. But no, that's just the easiest way. I have a website and stuff too. It's all linked off the Facebook page. That's just, I'm old, and that's the easiest platform for me to navigate. So that's kind of what I'm sticking with. But that, or you could just track Jarrod down. He'll find me and give me an excuse to talk to him. He's not overseas, enjoying the good life over there. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we did this, man. It's good to see both of you. It
was fun.
Zoom because you get to see people. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate it again and look forward to what the next one will be and learning from you more. So thank you guys. Thank everybody out there for listening. See you next time. As always, stay humble and do work.
See you guys.